The massive alien ship moved through space like a silver needle threading through black cloth. Commander Vextha stood on the bridge of the Void Seeker and watched the stars drift past the viewing screen. His blue skin had the faint shimmer that all Zephyrians possessed, and his large, dark eyes reflected the light from distant suns. 3 months ago, his science team had detected strange energy readings from this remote star system. Most commanders would have ignored such minor anomalies, but Vextha was thorough in his duties. The Kepler 442 system was supposed to be empty. Their star charts showed nothing but dead rocks and gas giants orbiting a dying star. No life had ever been detected here. No ships had ever passed through this region. It was the kind of place that existed only to fill empty space between more important worlds. Yet something had been sending out energy signatures that made no sense. Lieutenant Kralmoth approached from his science station. His movements were quick and nervous as always. The young Zephyrian had pale green markings across his forehead that indicated his rank in the science corps. Commander, we are approaching the 4th planet now. The energy readings are getting stronger. Much stronger than our initial scans suggested. Vextha nodded and moved to the central command chair. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Most of them had served together for years on various exploration missions. They were used to finding empty worlds and cataloging dead systems. This mission should have been no different. Show me the planet on screen. The viewing screen flickered and displayed a world that looked like something from a nightmare. The planet was covered in swirling clouds of toxic gas. Lightning storms flashed constantly across the surface. The polar regions were frozen solid, while the equatorial areas glowed with dangerous radiation. The gravity readings showed a crushing force that would flatten most known species. No sane being would ever try to live on such a world, but the sensors were showing something impossible. Commander, look at these readings. Kralmoth's voice carried a note of confusion that made everyone on the bridge turn to listen. I am detecting over 50,000 life signs on the surface. The biosignatures are consistent with human physiology, but that cannot be correct. Humans were eliminated 40 years ago during the Great Purge. Vextha felt his blood grow cold. Every being in the galaxy knew about the Great Purge. The Galactic Council had declared humanity too dangerous to exist. Human colonies had been destroyed. Their homeworld had been turned to glass. Every human ship in space had been hunted down and eliminated. The decision had not been made lightly, but humans had proven themselves to be too aggressive and unpredictable. To be allowed to spread across the galaxy, run the scans again. Check for equipment malfunction. There must be an error in our systems. Kralmoth worked frantically at his console for several minutes. Other crew members joined him to verify the readings. Security Officer Tethron moved closer to the command chair. Her red eyes showed the wariness that came from years of military service. Commander, if there really are humans down there, we need to be very careful. The reports from the Purge describe them as extremely dangerous. I have run the scans 5 times. Commander. Kralmoth looked up from his station with wide eyes. The readings are consistent. Those are definitely human life signs. But, Commander, there is something else. The settlement appears to have been there for decades. The infrastructure is extensive. I am detecting power sources that rival some of our major cities. Vextha stared at the toxic world spinning before them. How could humans survive on such a planet? The atmosphere would kill most species within minutes. The gravity would crush their bones. The radiation would cook their internal organs. Yet the sensors insisted that thousands of humans were living and thriving on the surface, bring us into a standard orbit but maintain maximum distance. I want full sensor sweeps of the entire planet. Look for defensive systems or hidden weapons. If these humans have been hiding here for 40 years, they may not welcome visitors. The ship moved into position around the nightmare world. More detailed scans revealed the impossible truth. The human settlement was not just surviving, but flourishing. Massive structures dotted the landscape. Energy readings showed advanced technology that should not exist. Most disturbing of all, The humans appeared to be living in areas where the environmental conditions were most severe. On the surface of the toxic world, Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the Central Command building. He was a tall man with dark hair and the kind of weathered face that came from years of hard living. His clothes were simple but well made from materials that could withstand the harsh environment outside. He watched the alien ship through instruments that had been scanning space for decades. Finally, they found us. His voice was calm but carried an undertone that suggested he had been expecting this moment for a long time. Jake turned to the communication officer at the nearby console. "Send word to Captain Harper. Tell her we have visitors. It is time to implement Protocol 7. The young woman at the console nodded and began transmitting coded messages throughout the settlement. Within minutes, every human in the colony would know that their long isolation was about to end. Some would be frightened. Others would be excited. All of them had been preparing for this day since they first arrived on this world. Jake looked back at the alien ship hanging in orbit above them. 40 years ago, the galaxy had tried to wipe out humanity. They had come very close to succeeding. Billions had died. Entire worlds had been destroyed. But some humans had escaped. They had found places like this world where no sane species would ever think to look. They had survived, but survival had not been enough. The humans who had escaped. The Purge had spent 40 years doing more than just staying alive. They had spent 4 decades preparing for the day when the galaxy would discover them again. They had studied every species that had participated in their destruction. They had analyzed every weapon that had been used against them. They had learned from every mistake that had led to their near extinction. Most importantly, they had changed. Jake touched a control panel and the observation deck's protective shutters opened to reveal the toxic landscape outside. Lightning crashed across purple skies. Acid rain fell in sheets across crystalline formations that grew from the poisoned soil. In the distance, geysers of superheated gas erupted from the planet's unstable core. It was a world that should kill anything foolish enough to try to live there. But Jake breathed the toxic air without any protection. His body had adapted to process the deadly atmosphere. His bones had strengthened to handle the crushing gravity. His cells had learned to absorb and convert the radiation that bathed everything on the planet's surface. He was still human, but he was also something more. Behind him, Captain Lisa Harper entered the observation deck. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much violence. Her military bearing was evident in every movement. "Jake, we have confirmation from 17 other settlements. They are all ready to implement their protocols as well. The galaxy is about to discover that rumors of our extinction were greatly exaggerated." Jake smiled, but there was no humor in the expression. The alien ship continued its scans, unaware that everything they were learning was being carefully monitored by the humans below. Soon the aliens would want to make contact. They would send down a diplomatic team expecting to find primitive survivors hiding in caves. Instead, they would discover something that would change their understanding of what humanity could become. 40 years of isolation were about to end, and the galaxy was going to learn what happened when you tried to destroy a species that refused to die. Commander Vextha stood before the main communication array on the bridge of the Void Seeker. The past 6 hours had been filled with increasingly disturbing discoveries. Every scan revealed more evidence that the impossible was happening on the planet below. The humans were not just surviving in the toxic environment, but had built a thriving civilization in conditions that should have killed them all. Prepare standard first contact protocols. Vextha's voice carried across the bridge. To his communication officer, begin with universal peace signals, followed by basic mathematical sequences. Let us see if these humans are willing to talk. The communication officer was a young Zephyrian named Neltar, whose nervous habits had become more pronounced since they detected the human settlement. She activated the transmission array and began broadcasting the standardized signals that all civilized species used when encountering unknown life forms. The mathematical sequences were simple, but demonstrated intelligence and peaceful intentions. For 20 minutes, they transmitted into empty space with no response. Some crew members began to whisper that maybe the humans were too primitive to understand the signals. Others suggested that the life signs might be false readings caused by some natural phenomenon on the toxic world. Then the impossible happened. "Commander, we are receiving a response." Neltar's voice cracked with surprise. "But sir, the response is not in any current galactic language. It appears to be in old Terran Federation codes." The bridge fell silent. Terran Federation codes had not been used for over 40 years. They were the diplomatic and military communication protocols that humans had used before the Great Purge. Every record of those codes should have been destroyed along with human civilization. Yet somehow these humans were using authentication, patterns that officially no longer existed, put the transmission on speakers. Vextha moved closer to the communication station. His security officer, Tethran, also approached with her hand resting on her weapon. The speakers crackled to life with a clear human voice speaking in accented but understandable galactic standard. "Alien vessel, this is New Terra Vista Ground Control. We acknowledge your peaceful intentions and request clarification of your purpose in this system. Please identify yourselves and state your mission parameters." Kralmoth looked up from his science station with wide eyes. "Commander, those are perfect. Terran Federation protocol phrases. How do they know diplomatic language that was banned decades ago?" Vextha gestured for silence and activated his own communication link. "New Terra Vista Ground Control, this is Commander Vextha of the Zephyrian Exploration Corps vessel Void Seeker. We detected energy signatures from your planet during a routine survey mission. We were not aware that this system was inhabited. We request permission to establish formal first contact procedures." The response came after a brief delay. "Commander Vextha, you are welcome to send a small diplomatic team to our main settlement. We can provide landing coordinates and basic safety information. Please be aware that our environmental conditions may require special protective equipment." For your species, Tethran moved closer to the commander. "Sir, this could be a trap. We do not know what capabilities these humans possess. They could be luring us into an ambush." Vextha considered the security officer's concerns. She was right to be cautious, but they needed answers. The existence of this human settlement would have to be reported to the Galactic Council eventually. Before that happened, he needed to understand what they were dealing with. Prepare a shuttle with full defensive capabilities. Select a minimal crew for the landing. Team, I will lead the mission personally. On the surface of the toxic world, Captain Lisa Harper stood in the main command center of New Terra Vista. She was surrounded by displays showing every detail of the alien ship in orbit above them. Her staff worked quietly at their stations, monitoring communications and tracking the movements of the Zephyrian vessel. Everyone knew that this moment would determine the future of their settlement and possibly all human survivors. The tactical display showed the alien ship's defensive capabilities. Harper studied the weapons systems and shield configurations with the eye of someone who had spent decades analyzing enemy technology. The Zephyrians were well armed, but their ship design followed predictable patterns. They relied heavily on energy weapons and had obvious weak points in their shield coverage. Major Sam Carter approached from the intelligence station. He was a man in his 40s with the calm demeanor of someone who had faced impossible situations before. "Captain, the alien commander has agreed to land with a small team. They are requesting safety protocols for their species. Should we provide accurate environmental data?" Harper considered the question carefully. The truth about their planet's environment would raise questions that they were not yet ready to answer. But providing false information could be seen as an act of hostility. "We tell them the truth about atmospheric composition and radiation levels. Let them draw their own conclusions about protective equipment. They will learn soon enough that their assumptions about human limitations are outdated." The communication officer looked up from her station. Captain, the aliens are requesting landing coordinates. They want to bring 3 team members in a standard diplomatic shuttle. Harper nodded and moved to the central command console. She activated the settlement. Wide communication system. All units, this is command. We are implementing first contact protocols as planned. Civilian populations should continue normal activities but remain alert for further instructions. Security teams take positions but do not display weapons unless directly threatened. Remember that these aliens believe humans are extinct. Let us show them how wrong they were. Dr. Sam Carter had been waiting for this day since the settlement was founded. He was the lead scientist who had helped design many of the adaptations that allowed humans to thrive in this hostile environment. As the chief scientific advisor, he would be part of the team that met with the aliens. The challenge would be explaining their survival without revealing the full extent of their capabilities. The landing coordinates led the aliens to a prepared area near the main settlement. The site had been chosen carefully to provide an impressive view of human achievements while hiding the more sensitive facilities. From this location, the aliens would see enough to understand that the humans were thriving, but not enough to comprehend how advanced they had become. Commander Vexatha piloted the shuttle through the toxic atmosphere with growing amazement. His instruments showed radiation levels that should have sterilized the entire planet. The atmospheric composition included dozens of compounds that were deadly to most known life forms. The gravity was nearly twice what Zephyrians considered comfortable. Yet as they descended toward the landing site, he could see extensive human structures spread across the landscape. The settlement was far larger than their orbital scans had suggested. Buildings stretched to the horizon in organized patterns that spoke of careful planning and abundant resources. Power distribution networks connected facilities that appeared to serve both civilian and industrial purposes. Most shocking of all, humans could be seen moving around the settlement without any protective equipment. Kralmoth monitored the environmental readings from his seat behind the commander. Sir, the atmospheric toxicity is increasing as we descend. Our protective suits will be essential for survival. I do not understand how the humans can function in these conditions. As the shuttle touched down on the prepared landing pad, Vextha saw a group of humans approaching across the open ground. They moved with easy confidence despite the crushing gravity and toxic air. Their clothing appeared to be simple work garments with no visible life support systems. Either the humans had developed protection technology beyond anything in the galactic database, or something fundamental had changed about human biology. The 3 Zephyrians sealed their protective suits and activated their portable life support systems before opening the shuttle hatch. The moment they stepped onto the surface of the nightmare world, they knew they were witnessing something that would change everything they thought they knew about humanity. Dr. Sam Carter walked forward to greet the alien delegation with a smile that held secrets the galaxy was not ready to understand. Dr. Sam Carter extended his hand in the traditional human greeting as the 3 Zephyrians approached across the landing pad. Their protective suits were bulky and moved slowly in the heavy gravity of the world. Carter noticed how they struggled with each step while he walked normally, despite the crushing atmospheric pressure that should have flattened any unprotected human. Welcome to New Terra Vista. Carter's voice was clear and strong, despite breathing air that the aliens' instruments showed was filled with deadly toxins. I am Dr. Sam Carter, chief scientist of this settlement. We are honored by your visit, though I admit we did not expect to receive guests. Commander Vextha studied the human through his helmet display. The man appeared to be in his 40s with dark hair and calm eyes that suggested intelligence and confidence. Most disturbing was the complete absence of any protective equipment. The human was breathing poison and standing in gravity that should crush his bones, yet he showed no signs of distress. I am Commander Vextha of the Zephyrian Exploration Corps. This is Lieutenant Kralmoth, our Chief Science Officer and Security Officer, Tethron. We appreciate your welcome, but I must ask how you are able to survive in these environmental conditions without protection. Carter smiled and gestured toward the settlement buildings in the distance. The answer to that question is rather complicated. Commander, perhaps you would like to tour our facilities while we discuss the history of our colony. I think you will find our adaptations quite interesting. The group began walking toward the main settlement complex. The Zephyrians moved carefully in their heavy suits, while Carter walked with easy confidence. As they traveled, Carter pointed out various buildings and explained their purposes. The medical center housed advanced research facilities. The manufacturing complex produced everything the settlement needed. The residential areas provided comfortable homes for over 50,000 people. What impressed the aliens most was not the size of the settlement, but the casual way humans moved through their daily activities. Children played in areas where radiation levels should have been fatal. Workers carried heavy equipment that should have been impossible to lift in the crushing gravity. Groups of people gathered in outdoor spaces breathing air that would kill most species within minutes. Lieutenant Kralmoth took constant readings with his portable instruments. Dr. Carter, the atmospheric composition in this area shows concentrations of sulfur compounds that are toxic to human physiology. Your people should be experiencing severe respiratory distress and cellular damage. Carter nodded thoughtfully as if the question was perfectly reasonable. Yes, our atmospheric conditions are quite different from standard human requirements. Our people have developed certain adaptations over the years that allow us to thrive in this environment. Perhaps our medical staff can provide more detailed explanations. They entered the main medical facility where Dr. Rachel Brooks was waiting to meet the delegation. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of confident bearing that came from years of dealing with impossible medical challenges. Her white coat showed no signs of protective equipment, despite working in an environment that should have been instantly lethal. "Welcome to our medical center." Dr. Brooks gestured toward examination rooms filled with advanced equipment. "I understand you have questions about human survival in our environmental conditions. I would be happy to provide some basic medical data, though I should warn you that our physiology may be somewhat different from standard human baselines." Security Officer Tetheron moved closer to Commander Vextha. Her red eyes showed the wariness of someone who sensed danger but could not identify its source. "Sir, something is very wrong here. No species can adapt to these conditions naturally. Either they have technology we cannot detect, or they are not entirely human anymore." "Doctor." Brooks overheard the comment and smiled politely. "Officer Tetheron, your concerns are understandable. Perhaps medical scans would help clarify the situation. We have equipment that can provide detailed physiological readings if that would ease." Your worries, Commander Vextha, decided that direct answers were needed. "Dr. Brooks, we would appreciate any medical data you can provide. Our instruments show environmental conditions that should be fatal to humans, yet your people appear completely unaffected. We need to understand how this is possible." Dr. Brooks led them to an examination room equipped with scanning devices that looked similar to standard galactic medical equipment, but with subtle differences that suggested advanced modifications. "Please, Commander, if you would allow me to take comparative scans of your physiology and one of our residents, we can demonstrate the differences." A young human woman entered the examination room. She appeared to be in her 20s with bright eyes and the healthy appearance of someone living in ideal conditions. She wore simple clothing and breathed the toxic air as naturally as if it were pure oxygen. Most shocking of all, she moved in the crushing gravity as if it were no more challenging than walking on a garden world. "This is Jenny Adams, one of our second-generation residents." Dr. Brooks activated the scanning equipment. "She was born here, on New Terra Vista, and represents the typical physiological adaptations we have developed." The medical scanners revealed readings that made the Zephyrian step back in shock. The human woman's bone density was nearly 3 times normal human standards. Her lung capacity was enhanced with additional filtering systems that processed toxic compounds. Her cellular structure showed modifications that allowed her to absorb and convert harmful radiation into usable energy. Lieutenant Kralmoth stared at the display readings. "These modifications are impossible. No species can evolve this rapidly. These changes would require thousands of years of natural selection or advanced genetic manipulation beyond anything in our databases. Dr. Brooks studied the scan results with professional interest. Lieutenant, you are correct that natural evolution could not produce these changes in 40 years. Our adaptations were the result of careful planning and advanced biological research. We have had to become something new to survive in our chosen environment. The implications of her words settled over the Zephyrian delegation like a cold shadow. These were not human survivors who had accidentally found refuge on a hostile world. These were humans who had deliberately chosen the most impossible environment they could find, and then systematically modified themselves to not just survive, but thrive in conditions that would kill any other known species. Commander Vextha realized they were not looking at the remnants of destroyed human civilization. They were looking at something that had been created in response to the Great Purge. Something that had used the attempted genocide as motivation to transcend every limitation that had made humans vulnerable in the first place. Doctor. Carter spoke, quietly, from beside the examination table. Commander, I think it is time we showed you the full scope of what we have accomplished here. But I should warn you that what you learn today will change your understanding of what humanity has become. Through the medical center windows, the toxic storms continued to rage across the landscape. Lightning flashed through purple clouds while acid rain fell on crystalline formations that grew from poisoned soil. In the distance, geysers of superheated gas erupted from unstable ground. It was a world designed by nature to kill anything foolish enough to try to live there. But the humans had not just survived this nightmare world, they had made it their home. They had changed themselves into something that could not only tolerate the impossible conditions, but actually benefit from them. The crushing gravity had made them stronger. The toxic atmosphere had enhanced their filtering systems. The deadly radiation had become a source of energy. The Zephyrians were beginning to understand that they had not discovered a hidden human colony. They had found something far more dangerous. They had found proof that humanity's response to attempted extinction was not to hide or flee, but to evolve beyond every weakness that had made them vulnerable in the first place. Commander Vextha looked at the young human woman who was chatting casually with Dr. Brooks while breathing poison and standing in gravity that would cripple most galactic species. 40 years ago, the galaxy had tried to destroy humanity because they were considered too dangerous to exist. Now he was beginning to understand that the galaxy's worst fears about human potential had been proven correct. Dr. Carter led the stunned Zephyrian delegation through a series of security checkpoints deeper into the settlement complex. Each door required biometric scans and authorization codes that spoke of military-level security protocols. The aliens noticed that every human they passed moved with the same impossible ease in the crushing gravity while breathing the toxic atmosphere as naturally as breathing pure air. Commander, I believe it is time you understood the full scope of what we have accomplished during our 40 years of isolation. Carter's voice carried a weight that suggested they were about to see something that would change everything. What you have witnessed so far is merely the surface of our transformation. They entered a massive underground facility that stretched far beyond what their orbital scans had suggested possible. The central chamber was filled with advanced equipment that combined familiar galactic technology with innovations that appeared decades ahead of anything in the known databases. Humans worked at control stations monitoring displays that showed complex genetic sequences and biological modification processes. Lieutenant Kralmoth activated his scanning equipment, but found that many of the devices around them were shielded against external observation. Dr. Carter, this facility appears to be much larger than our initial surveys indicated. What is the primary purpose of this installation? Dr. Nick Sullivan approached from a nearby workstation. He was a tall man with gray hair and the focused intensity of someone who had spent years pushing the boundaries of known science. His movements showed the same enhanced physical capabilities that all the settlement residents displayed. I am Dr. Sullivan, the lead geneticist for this project. To answer your question, Lieutenant, this facility is where we redesigned the human species. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Security Officer Tethran moved closer to her commander, while her hand moved instinctively toward her weapon. Commander Vextha stood perfectly still, as the implications of what he was hearing began to settle in his mind. The humans had not just adapted to survive on this hostile world, they had systematically re-engineered themselves. Dr. Sullivan gestured toward a series of displays that showed detailed genetic maps and biological modification charts. When the survivors first arrived on New Terra Vista 40 years ago, they faced a simple choice. They could try to terraform this world to suit human needs, or they could modify humans to thrive in the existing conditions. Terraforming would have taken centuries and required resources we did not possess. Genetic modification could be accomplished. In a single generation, Commander Vextha found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. You deliberately chose to modify your own species rather than adapt your environment, Doctor. Sullivan nodded with the calm confidence of someone discussing a successful engineering project. The modifications were not random, Commander. Every change was carefully planned and tested. We enhanced bone density to handle the gravity. We modified respiratory systems to process the atmospheric toxins. We adapted cellular structures to convert radiation into usable energy. Most importantly, we enhanced cognitive function and learning capacity. The last statement made Lieutenant Kralmoth look up sharply from his instruments. Enhanced cognitive function. What exactly does that mean? Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Carter moved to another display that showed complex neural pathway diagrams. It means, Lieutenant, that each generation of humans born on New Terra Vista has been systematically improved beyond the previous generation. Enhanced memory retention, faster processing speeds, improved pattern recognition, better emotional control under stress. We have been deliberately evolving Human Intelligence Security Officer Tethran could no longer contain her growing alarm. Commander, this is exactly the kind of development the Galactic Council feared when they ordered the Great Purge. They declared humans too dangerous because of their adaptability and aggression. These people have proven that fear was justified, Doctor. Sullivan turned toward the security officer with eyes that showed an intelligence that made her instinctively step backward. Officer Tethran, you are correct that we have exceeded the capabilities that made the Council consider us dangerous. But you are wrong about our motivations. We did not enhance ourselves to become better weapons. We enhanced ourselves to become better survivors, Doctor. Carter activated another display that showed detailed records of galactic military technology and political structures. During our 40 years of isolation, we have not just been improving ourselves. We have been studying every species that participated in our destruction. We know the capabilities of every ship in the galactic fleet. We understand the political weaknesses of every council member species. We have analyzed every strategy that was used against us during the Purge. The scope of what the humans had accomplished was becoming clear to Commander Vextha. They had not just survived the attempted genocide, they had used their isolation to prepare for eventual contact with the galaxy that had tried to destroy them. They had spent 4 decades becoming something that could not be eliminated by the same methods that had nearly succeeded before. Lieutenant Kralmoth was studying the data displays with growing horror. Commander, these records show detailed intelligence on dozens of species, including our own. They have technical specifications for our ship designs, military protocols, and even psychological profiles of our leadership, Doctor. Sullivan smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Knowledge is the foundation of survival, Lieutenant. We could not afford to remain ignorant about the forces that had tried to destroy us. Information gathering was essential to our long-term planning. Colonel Ben Rodriguez entered the chamber from a side corridor. He was a man whose bearing immediately identified him as military despite wearing simple civilian clothing. His enhanced physiology was evident in every movement as he crossed the room with fluid grace despite the crushing gravity. Dr. Carter, I believe our guests should see the manufacturing levels before they return to their ship. The delegation was led deeper into the facility through corridors that revealed the true scale of the human operation. Production lines stretched into the distance, creating components for technologies that the Zephyrians could not immediately identify. The scope of the manufacturing capability was staggering for a settlement that supposedly consisted of survivors hiding from galactic civilization. Dr. Carter stopped before a massive viewing window that looked down into assembly areas where humans worked on projects that defied identification. Commander, what you are seeing is the result of 40 years of dedicated preparation. We have not just been surviving on this world. We have been building. Commander Vextha stared through the window at production lines that were creating what appeared to be spacecraft components using materials and designs that exceeded anything in the galactic databases. These people were not just enhanced humans living in isolation. They were preparing for something. Colonel Rodriguez moved beside the commander and spoke quietly. We have been in communication with other survivor settlements, Commander. New Terra Vista is not unique. There are 17 other worlds where human survivors have been following similar development programs. Each settlement has specialized in different aspects of our reconstruction. The words hit the Zephyrian delegation like physical blows. 17 other settlements. Multiple worlds where humans had been enhancing themselves and building advanced technology for 40 years. The scope of what they were discovering was beyond anything they had imagined possible. Dr. Sullivan approached the viewing window and gestured toward the manufacturing lines below. Commander, we estimate that our combined settlements now possess technology that exceeds galactic standard capabilities by approximately 15 to 20 years. Our enhanced cognitive abilities have allowed us to solve engineering problems that have challenged other species for decades. Lieutenant Kralmoth turned toward Commander Vextha with fear clearly visible in his large, dark eyes. Sir, we need to report these findings to the Galactic Council immediately. If the humans have this level of capability and have been preparing for 40 years, Dr. Carter interrupted the lieutenant with a voice that carried absolute certainty. Officer Kralmoth, you will indeed report your findings to the Council, but I think you should understand the complete situation before you make your recommendations. The humans had not just survived the Great Purge, they had used it as the motivation to become something that made their original capabilities seem primitive by comparison. They had enhanced their bodies, their minds, and their technology to levels that exceeded anything the galaxy had seen before. Most terrifying of all, they had been preparing for this moment for 4 decades. Commander Vextha realized that his discovery of New Terra Vista was not an accident. The humans had allowed themselves to be found because they were ready for the galaxy to know what they had become. The viewing chamber fell silent as the Zephyrian delegation absorbed the magnitude of what they had discovered. Commander Vextha stared at the manufacturing lines below, where humans worked on technologies that exceeded anything in the galactic databases. His mind raced through the implications of 17 hidden settlements that had been preparing for 4 decades to return to a galaxy that thought they were extinct. Dr. Amy Foster entered the chamber from the diplomatic wing of the facility. She was a woman in her 40s whose enhanced intelligence was evident in her sharp eyes and confident bearing. Her simple clothing did nothing to hide the fact that she moved with the same impossible grace that all the settlement residents displayed. She approached the alien delegation with the calm assurance of someone who had spent years preparing for this exact moment. Commander Vextha, I am Dr. Foster, the diplomatic liaison for New Terra Vista. I believe it is time we discuss the options available to both our peoples now that you have learned the truth about human survival. Security Officer Tethron stepped forward with her hand still resting on her weapon. Doctor, the existence of enhanced humans with advanced technology represents a direct threat to galactic security. The Galactic Council will demand immediate action to contain this situation. Dr. Foster smiled with genuine warmth, but her eyes showed an intelligence that made the security officer uncomfortable. Officer Tethron, your concerns are understandable, but I think you may be approaching this situation from the wrong perspective. We are not your enemies. Despite what happened 40 years ago, Lieutenant Kralmoth was still studying his instrument readings with growing disbelief. Dr. Foster, our scans indicate that your defensive capabilities far exceed anything our ship could overcome. Your technology appears to be decades ahead of current galactic standards. How can you claim not to be a threat, Doctor? Foster moved to a control panel and activated a three-dimensional display that showed star charts marking the locations of human settlements throughout the galaxy. Officer Kralmoth, you are correct that we possess advanced defensive capabilities. But defense and offense serve very different purposes. We have spent 40 years preparing to survive, not to attack. The display showed 17 different star systems with human settlements that had remained hidden from galactic civilization. Each settlement had specialized in different aspects of technology and enhancement. The scope of the human survival network was staggering. They had not just hidden on one impossible world, but had created a distributed civilization that could not be destroyed by any single action commander. Vextha studied the star chart with the growing realization that everything he thought he knew about the galactic situation was wrong. Dr. Foster, why are you showing us this information? You could have remained hidden indefinitely. Dr. Foster deactivated the display and turned toward the commander with an expression that showed both sadness and determination. Commander, because remaining hidden is no longer possible, and because the current galactic situation is fundamentally unstable. The same forces that led to the Great Purge are still present in the Council structure. Other species will eventually face the same fate we did. Colonel Rodriguez moved closer to the group with the bearing of someone who had spent decades analyzing military and political situations. The Galactic Council's decision to commit genocide rather than find accommodation with humanity proved that the current system cannot handle true diversity of thought or capability. That structural weakness will eventually destroy other species. As well, the implications of what the humans were suggesting began to settle in Commander Vextha's mind. They were not just offering information about their survival. They were presenting an analysis that challenged the fundamental stability of galactic civilization itself. The same council that had ordered human extinction could make similar decisions about any species that became too powerful or too different, Doctor. Foster activated another display that showed detailed analysis of galactic political structures and economic systems. We have spent 40 years studying not just military technology, but political patterns and social dynamics. The Council operates on principles that inevitably lead to conflict with any species that develops beyond acceptable parameters. Lieutenant Kralmoth looked up from his instruments with confusion evident in his large, dark eyes. Doctor, are you suggesting that the Galactic Council system is inherently flawed? Doctor. Carter moved forward to join the discussion. Lieutenant, the Council system worked well when all member species had similar capabilities and limitations. But what happens when a species develops technology or abilities that exceed those parameters? The response to humanity shows exactly what happens. Elimination rather than accommodation. The truth of what the humans were saying was becoming clear to the Zephyrian delegation. The Great Purge had not been an isolated decision based on specific human actions. It had been the predictable result of a system that could not tolerate members who exceeded certain thresholds of capability or independence. Dr. Foster continued with the calm certainty of someone presenting well-researched conclusions. Commander, your own species is approaching technological developments that may soon put you in conflict with Council limitations. Your exploration capabilities are advancing rapidly. Your scientific achievements are beginning to exceed those of older Council members. How long before someone decides that Zephyrians are becoming too capable to be allowed to continue developing? The question hung in the air like a physical threat. Commander Vextha realized that the humans were not just offering information about their own situation. They were warning him about his species' future. The same progression that had led to human elimination could eventually target any species that became too advanced or too independent. Security Officer Tethran moved closer to her commander. Sir, we cannot trust these people. They have every reason to want revenge against the species that participated in their destruction. Dr. Foster turned toward the security officer with eyes that showed deep understanding rather than anger. Officer, Tethron revenge would be both pointless and counterproductive. We are not interested in destroying the species that participated in the purge. We are interested in creating a galactic structure that prevents such decisions from being made again, Colonel. Rodriguez activated a tactical display that showed detailed analysis of current galactic military capabilities. Our enhanced cognitive abilities have allowed us to develop strategies that could overcome existing defenses if we chose to pursue military solutions. But Commander, military victory would only create the same unstable situation that existed before, the purge. The display showed simulation results that demonstrated how enhanced humans could overwhelm current galactic defenses through superior technology and strategic thinking. But the simulations also showed that such victories would inevitably lead to new cycles of conflict and instability. Dr. Foster moved to the center of the group and spoke with quiet conviction. Commander, we are offering your species and others an alternative to the current system. Join us in building a galactic structure based on accommodation rather than limitation. Help us create a civilization that can handle diversity of capability without resorting to genocide. The offer was both simple and revolutionary. The humans were not seeking revenge or conquest. They were proposing to rebuild galactic civilization on principles that could prevent future genocides while allowing all species to develop their full potential without fear of elimination. Commander Vexathos stared at the enhanced humans surrounding him and realized that they had already won any conflict before it began. Their technology exceeded galactic standards. Their intelligence surpassed normal human capabilities. Their distributed settlements could not be eliminated by any single military action. Most importantly, they had proven that they could survive and thrive in conditions that would destroy any other known species. But they were not using their advantages to seek revenge. They were offering partnership in rebuilding a galaxy that could accommodate species of any capability level without resorting to elimination as a solution to differences. Lieutenant Kralmoth spoke quietly. Commander, if we report this to the Council, they may order another purge attempt. But if these humans are telling the truth about their capabilities, such an attempt would likely fail and lead to open warfare. Dr. Foster nodded with the calm certainty of someone who had considered every possible scenario. Lieutenant, that is exactly why we chose to reveal ourselves now. The current system will eventually collapse under its own limitations. We can either wait for that collapse and deal with the chaos that follows, or we can work together to build something better before the breakdown occurs. Commander Vextha faced the most important decision of his career. He could return to his ship and report the discovery of surviving humans with advanced capabilities. The Council would likely order immediate military action that would almost certainly fail and lead to devastating conflict. Or he could consider the human proposal to work together in building a new galactic structure that could accommodate any level of species development. The enhanced humans waited patiently for his decision while the toxic storms continued to rage outside the facility. They had spent 40 years preparing for this moment, and they were confident in their analysis of the situation. Calm.